Imagine an endless sea of sand dunes beneath a relentless sun, stretching out toward the horizon as far as the eye can see. It's 525 BC, and the sands of Egypt's western desert shimmer beneath the midday heat. Through this desolate landscape marches an enormous Persian army, 50,000 disciplined soldiers moving in perfect formation. The sunlight glints sharply off their polished bronze armor. Bright banners ripple gently in the dry desert breeze. Horses and camels trudge steadily forward, kicking up fine clouds of golden dust, their riders confident and fearless. Leading this impressive force were trusted commanders appointed by Cambyses II, the ambitious Persian king and son of Cyrus the Great. Having already conquered Egypt, Cambyses sought to solidify his authority by capturing one of the ancient world's most sacred sites, the Oracle of Amun, deep within the remote Siwa oasis. Cambyses himself remained behind in Egypt, entrusting his commanders to achieve victory. Yet, as this mighty Persian army journeys deeper into the unforgiving desert sands, something inexplicable happens. The soldiers, their weapons, animals, supplies, all vanish without any explanation or trace. No survivors ever return, no scouts bring news of their fate. And despite centuries of searching, no artifacts or remains are ever found. It's as if the desert itself quietly swallowed an entire army, leaving history with one of its greatest unanswered mysteries. But how exactly does an entire army disappear without leaving even a single clue behind? Armies leave footprints, campsites, broken weapons, evidence of their passing. Yet here, nothing was ever discovered. Could the harsh desert conditions alone have completely erased Cambyses' massive force? Or did something else happen in the vast, silent sands? Stick around as we dive deeper into this historical mystery and explore other ancient mysteries that still puzzle historians today. Sit back, relax, and let your curiosity guide you as we continue this journey into the unknown. The visuals you'll see here will add context and detail, but they're not essential. So whether you're closely watching or simply listening, you won't miss a moment of this fascinating journey. Now, let's jump in. Cambyses II stepped into power around 530 BC, inheriting one of history's greatest empires from his renowned father, Cyrus the Great. Imagine being handed an empire so vast it stretched from the banks of the Indus River in the east to the shores of the Mediterranean in the west. Yet Cambyses, ambitious and determined, wasn't satisfied with mere inheritance. He wanted more. Soon, his eyes turned toward Egypt, the fertile and ancient land famous for its vast wealth, rich culture, and historical significance. In 525 BC, Cambyses moved swiftly to conquer Egypt, dispatching his armies to march upon its borders. Egyptian resistance, while brave, quickly fell before the experienced Persian forces. Within a short time, Cambyses secured victory, crowning himself as pharaoh, ruler over the vast Nile Valley. It was an impressive conquest, but Cambyses' ambition wasn't merely to rule Egypt. He sought to establish unquestionable authority. At this point, Cambyses' attention turned toward an obscure yet immensely significant place deep within Egypt's western desert, the Oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis. Nestled among palm trees and endless sand dunes, Siwa was no ordinary desert oasis. It held one of the ancient world's most respected oracles, believed by many, including Egyptian pharaohs and foreign kings, to be the literal voice of the gods. Rulers traveled great distances, braving harsh terrain, simply to receive wisdom and validation from the oracle. Its priests interpreted signs, dreams, and omens, guiding kings through crucial decisions and solidifying their legitimacy. To Cambyses, however, the Oracle of Amun represented a potential threat as much as an opportunity. As a foreign conqueror crowned pharaoh, Cambyses faced ongoing skepticism and resistance from Egyptians who questioned his right to rule. If the oracle were to speak against him, Cambyses' legitimacy could easily crumble. But if he could capture or neutralize it, he would effectively silence any remaining opposition. It was not merely a religious target, it was a symbol of authority, legitimacy, and power. But why would he risk so much to control a single oracle? To him, The Siwa Oracle was more than just a temple in the desert. It was a key to securing Egypt's loyalty completely, to demonstrating his authority above both people and gods. To achieve this final step, he gathered a massive army, dispatching them westward into the daunting sands, unknowingly setting in motion one of history's most mysterious disappearances. With his mind firmly set on capturing the Oracle of Amun, Cambyses carefully selected 50,000 of his most seasoned and experienced Persian soldiers, men accustomed to difficult terrains, harsh climates, and relentless battles. To navigate the notoriously treacherous Western Desert, he enlisted skilled Egyptian guides, familiar with the intricate patterns of dunes and oasis paths that crisscross the sandy expanses. This wasn't a hastily assembled force. It was a well-equipped, expertly planned expedition, designed to withstand the harshest conditions imaginable. Imagine this massive force stepping steadily into the boundless desert. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers, animals, and supply caravans moving across endless expanses of sand, driven by confidence and unwavering determination. Each day, the desert challenged their endurance with relentless heat, shifting sands, and exhaustion. Under the blistering sun, soldiers' armor grew hot to the touch, reflecting a harsh glare that made visibility difficult. Yet they pressed onward, driven by the promise of victory. Nights brought freezing temperatures, further exhausting the soldiers. The desert, an unforgiving landscape, had claimed many lives over centuries, yet Cambyses' army marched steadily forward, confident in their numbers and the expertise of their Egyptian guides. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks stretched further into uncertainty, Cambyses and his commanders back in Egypt grew increasingly uneasy. No scouts returned to report on their progress. No messengers appeared with news of their whereabouts. This disciplined army, experienced and organized, had ceased all communication completely. Yet no signs emerged from this massive force. 50,000 soldiers, horses, camels, and equipment. There was only silence. No signal fires lit on the horizon. No signs of camps or trails were found. Soon, it became clear something inexplicable had occurred. The mighty Persian force, sent by a king eager to solidify his grip on Egypt, had somehow vanished, swallowed whole by the sands they sought to conquer. Over time, their disappearance became a chilling mystery. Soldiers who once stood proudly beneath fluttering banners, horses and camels laden with provisions, experienced guides who knew the desert's every path. All of them simply disappeared without any trace, leaving no bodies, artifacts, or even faint evidence of their passing. But what really happened to Cambyses' army beneath the desert sands? Could a natural event alone account for such a complete disappearance, or was there another hidden factor at play, waiting silently beneath the dunes? The earliest and most famous account we have of Cambyses' lost army comes from the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, often called the father of history. Herodotus wrote about this incident approximately 75 years after the event, describing a vivid and dramatic scene. According to Herodotus, the Persian army was suddenly caught in a violent sandstorm that erupted from the horizon. He described this storm in striking detail, comparing it to a towering wave rising from a sea of sand, crashing down upon the soldiers and swallowing them entirely. Herodotus claimed that the entire army, soldiers, animals, equipment, disappeared in a single moment, completely buried beneath the sand, leaving no clues. The story quickly took root, captivating generations of historians and explorers with its dramatic imagery and mysterious nature. But even as vivid and compelling as Herodotus' account might be, some questions remain. Could a single sandstorm, no matter how powerful, realistically erase an entire army of 50,000 men without leaving behind even a small artifact or bone fragment? While desert sandstorms can indeed be powerful enough to reshape landscapes, many historians remain skeptical that nature alone could fully explain the army's complete disappearance. Even so, Herodotus' account remains the most widely accepted explanation, primarily due to its vivid detail and ancient origins. It stands as a compelling yet somewhat incomplete historical account, leaving historians and researchers to grapple with lingering questions. Could nature alone explain such a complete disappearance? Or does Herodotus' story hint at something else? A hidden element to this ancient mystery, waiting silently beneath the desert sands. Over the years, historians and explorers have continually been intrigued by the mystery surrounding Cambyses' lost army. Could there still be evidence hidden somewhere beneath Egypt's shifting desert sands? One particularly promising search took place in 1996, led by two Italian archaeologists, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione. They conducted an extensive survey in the area near the Siwa Oasis, where Cambyses' army was believed to have vanished. Carefully excavating beneath the hot sands, the Castiglione brothers uncovered artifacts that immediately sparked excitement in the archaeological community. Fragments of ancient weapons, jewelry featuring Persian-style craftsmanship, and even human bones scattered among the dunes. Initially, these findings seemed like the breakthrough everyone had hoped for. The weapons closely matched styles known to have been used by Persian soldiers, and the jewelry bore intricate Persian-inspired designs, appearing consistent with Cambyses' era. The discovery quickly drew international attention, as historians speculated that after nearly 2,500 years, the mystery might finally be solved. However, as archaeologists conducted deeper investigations and more rigorous tests, serious questions emerged. Radiocarbon dating and thorough laboratory analysis of the bones and artifacts revealed surprising results. Instead of dating back to Cambyses' time around 525 BC, the tests indicated the finds belonged to the Roman period, nearly 5 centuries later. The realization was disappointing, quickly dampening enthusiasm and returning archaeologists to the starting point in their search for answers. Despite this setback, efforts to uncover the truth continued. In the following decades, archaeologists turned to increasingly sophisticated technology. Starting around 2000, satellite imagery from NASA and other agencies provided high-resolution images of Egypt's western desert, allowing researchers to closely examine the region from above. Ground-penetrating radar, a technology capable of detecting buried objects and structures, was deployed on several expeditions. International teams combed various areas around Siwa, hoping for even faint traces of the army's remains: metal objects, buried weapons, or disturbed terrain. In 2009, a detailed expedition led by Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass and funded by National Geographic explored the so-called Great Sand Sea, a massive, treacherous expanse of desert dunes stretching between Siwa and the Nile Valley. This team meticulously mapped and searched specific routes the army might have taken, combining satellite data, ground radar, and careful archaeological surveying. Despite these thorough and high-profile searches, again, no definitive traces, no bones, armor, or equipment were found. The ongoing failure to uncover evidence, even with modern technology and expert exploration, has left historians perplexed. Could the unforgiving desert conditions alone fully explain the army's complete disappearance? Or might answers still lie quietly buried beneath the shifting sands, waiting for the right moment or technology to finally reveal them? Over the years, several theories have emerged attempting to explain what really happened to Cambyses' lost army. Each theory is plausible in its own way, offering a possible explanation for why an entire army vanished without leaving behind even a small clue or artifact. One commonly discussed theory is betrayal. Perhaps the Egyptian guides, who Cambyses relied on to navigate the treacherous desert routes, purposely led the Persian army astray, steering them into dangerous, impassable territory as an act of subtle rebellion. Such deliberate deception has historical precedent. During Alexander the Great's campaigns, local guides occasionally misled armies into ambushes or inhospitable terrain as acts of resistance or sabotage. This historical fact adds credibility to the idea that Cambyses' guides might have intentionally led his soldiers into a dangerous or hopeless situation. Another plausible explanation involves hidden environmental hazards such as quicksand or unstable terrain beneath the shifting sands. Another plausible explanation involves hidden environmental hazards such as quicksand or unstable terrain beneath the shifting sands. Desert regions like Egypt's western desert can harbor terrain that's deceptively dangerous. Historical accounts from various desert expeditions note that soldiers, caravans, and even entire groups of travelers have disappeared when unknowingly entering terrain that can quickly engulf them, leaving no visible trace behind. A third theory is an ambush by local desert tribes or nomadic groups familiar with the terrain. Perhaps these groups attacked and eliminated the army quietly, then removed any evidence to hide their involvement. Historical ambushes were common, like when Roman general Crassus lost thousands of soldiers to a devastating ambush by desert-dwelling Parthian forces at Carrhae in 53 BC, suggesting such tactics weren't uncommon. Finally, there's a simpler but equally compelling theory: navigational error. The harsh conditions and endless expanses of sand dunes could easily disorient even the most experienced guides and soldiers. History notes many armies losing their way in vast deserts or large caravans becoming lost, wandering aimlessly until exhaustion and dehydration overcame them. In fact, Alexander the Great's army once suffered significant losses due to navigation errors in desert conditions, underscoring how easily such mistakes could occur even to disciplined, experienced soldiers. Yet despite these plausible explanations and clear historical parallels, no concrete evidence supports any particular theory regarding Cambyses' army. No remains, weapons, or equipment have ever surfaced, leaving historians still puzzled. Could there still be a simpler explanation hidden beneath the shifting sands, quietly waiting to be discovered? Until evidence emerges, the fate of the lost army remains an intriguing puzzle, forever awaiting answers beneath Egypt's shifting sands. High in the remote Indian Himalayas, surrounded by jagged peaks and swirling mist, lies Roopkund Lake, a small, frozen body of water with an unsettling secret. Picture yourself trekking through these cold, desolate heights, guided only by the dim light of dawn. As you approach the shoreline, you notice something strange beneath the ice. Through the clear surface, you see bones, scattered human skulls and skeletons, eerily preserved, untouched for centuries. But this isn't the result of a single disaster. These remains belong to people who died at different points in time, sometimes separated by hundreds, even thousands of years. It's as if the lake has quietly gathered lives across the ages, drawing them in, only to reveal their presence much later. First discovered by a forest ranger in 1942, Roopkund, now often called Skeleton Lake, has fascinated scientists, historians, and explorers alike. And the more they've uncovered, the stranger the mystery becomes. Genetic studies show that the people who died here weren't from one place. Some came from South Asia, others from as far away as the Mediterranean, separated by thousands of years. Despite decades of research, one question remains unanswered. What brought all these people to such an isolated, inhospitable place, and why did none of them make it back? Tonight, we'll examine the enduring mystery of Roopkund Lake. We'll look at what science has revealed, the leading theories that have emerged, and the unsettling pattern that continues to defy explanation. A frozen lake that seems to claim lives again and again across time, continents, and cultures. So settle in, perhaps dim the lights, and join us as we explore Roopkund Lake, a place where the landscape is silent, but the past speaks volumes. Roopkund Lake lies high in the Indian Himalayas, situated over 16,000 feet above sea level in the rugged region of Uttarakhand. Hidden among rocky peaks and icy trails, this remote lake is rarely visited. Despite its small size, just 40 meters across and no deeper than 10 feet, reaching it requires an arduous 5-day hike through dense forests, alpine meadows, and steep rocky trails. It remains frozen most of the year, thawing briefly during the warmer months to reveal its startling secret. The environment around Roopkund Lake makes survival extremely challenging, nearly impossible for those unprepared for its harsh conditions. The region endures bitter cold, fierce winds, sudden violent storms, and rapid weather changes. Sparse vegetation, mostly alpine grasses, small shrubs, and hardy wildflowers, can endure the thin, oxygen-poor air. Wildlife is similarly limited, including only specialized animals like snow leopards, Himalayan tahr, musk deer, and high-altitude birds. These challenging conditions explain why Roopkund has long been considered deadly and inaccessible, and why local shepherds, despite knowing of its existence for generations, quietly warned each other to avoid this sacred yet unsettling place. Beyond these shepherds, the lake remained largely unknown to the rest of the world. It wasn't until 1942 that Roopkund Lake entered public consciousness. Hari Kishan Mathwal, a British forest ranger assigned to patrol these remote mountain slopes, found himself wandering near this obscure lake while mapping the rugged Himalayan landscape. As Madhwal approached the lakeshore, he noticed something unsettling. Pale shapes scattered among the stones at the water's edge, catching the sunlight in an unnatural way. Stepping closer, a chill ran down his spine as he realized what he was looking at. Human bones, skulls, rib cages, leg bones, arms, and even jaw bones lay exposed to the mountain air, partially submerged beneath the icy waters. Initially, Madhwal assumed he had stumbled upon the aftermath of a recent tragedy, perhaps pilgrims caught unaware by a sudden storm, or travelers overcome by harsh mountain conditions. But upon examining the bones carefully, it quickly became clear these remains had been there far longer than just a few seasons. Weathered, bleached, and scattered, the bones had clearly endured many harsh Himalayan winters. Following Madhwal's startling report, researchers and investigators soon journeyed to this remote lake to uncover more about the mystery. What they found was far stranger and more complex than anyone imagined. Instead of just a handful of skeletons, they discovered hundreds of individuals, scattered all around the lake shore and resting beneath its clear, shallow waters. Men, women, children, all seemingly struck down suddenly, without obvious cause. No clothing, weapons, or personal items remained to offer immediate clues about who these people were or how they had died. Because of this eerie discovery, Roopkund Lake became popularly known as Skeleton Lake. News of the site quickly spread, capturing imaginations worldwide. Initially mistaken in the 1950s for lost Japanese World War II soldiers, later evidence disproved this theory entirely, deepening the mystery. Yet despite numerous scientific investigations and archaeological studies, the lake continued to guard its secrets closely. Who were these people? Why had so many gathered at such a remote and inhospitable place? And perhaps most puzzling of all, what caused their sudden, unexplained demise? To begin unraveling these mysteries, it helps to look not just at modern scientific theories, but also at the stories and beliefs of the people who have lived near Roopkund for generations. Long before researchers arrived at the scene, local villagers had their own explanations for the strange sight at the lake, stories deeply woven into the fabric of their folklore and culture. One of the oldest and most persistent stories involves an ancient king named Jasdawal. According to legend, King Jasdawal was traveling through the Himalayas with his queen, who was pregnant at the time, along with many servants, dancers, musicians, and warriors. Their goal was to reach the shrine of the goddess Nanda Devi, a very important deity in the area. The king intended to worship the goddess and ask for her blessings for his unborn child. But something about the king's lavish procession angered Nanda Devi. Some villagers say it was because the journey was overly extravagant, considered disrespectful to the modesty expected by the goddess. Others thought the queen herself broke local customs by approaching the sacred site while pregnant, which traditions at the time strictly forbade. Whatever the exact reason, the goddess became deeply offended. In anger, she unleashed a sudden hailstorm on the travelers. Large hailstones, about the size of cricket balls, fell from the sky onto King Jasdawal and his entire group. With no trees or caves for shelter around Roopkund, the king, his queen, and everyone with them had nowhere to hide and were unable to escape. But the story of King Jasdawal isn't the only legend about Roopkund Lake. For generations, the lake has been closely connected to pilgrimages to the shrine of the goddess Nanda Devi. Every year, villagers and pilgrims set out on a difficult trek through steep mountain passes and unpredictable weather to reach the shrine high in the Himalayas. This pilgrimage is a test of faith and endurance, and completing it is believed to bring blessings and protection from the goddess. Yet, not every pilgrim returned safely. Over time, stories spread about those who traveled into the mountains and never came back. Locals spoke of pilgrims who might have accidentally broken traditions, taken wrong paths, or unknowingly shown disrespect. These stories led villagers to believe the bones scattered around Roopkund belonged to these lost pilgrims, punished by divine anger. As knowledge of the bones spread, the lake developed a reputation as a place to be both feared and respected, a stark reminder of the dangers associated with offending higher powers. For decades, these local legends provided the primary explanation for Roopkund Lake's eerie mystery. However, once scientists began closely examining the site, a very different and far more complex picture emerged. When Roopkund Lake was first discovered, researchers initially believed that all the skeletons belonged to victims of a single tragic event, perhaps a pilgrimage gone wrong, or travelers unexpectedly caught in a severe mountain storm. For decades, this straightforward explanation seemed logical. However, recent scientific studies have dramatically altered this understanding, revealing complexities that no one anticipated. In fact, National Geographic estimates that between 500 to 800 individual skeletons are visible at Roopkund Lake, with the true number likely higher due to some remains being buried beneath rocky debris, lost under shifting sediments, or worn away by erosion and human interference over the years. This remarkably high number underscores not just one isolated tragedy, but rather the cumulative misfortune of numerous groups of travelers who ventured into this remote Himalayan region across centuries, each ultimately meeting a similarly tragic fate. Scientific examination to uncover this mystery began in the early 2000s, when DNA analysis was still quite new and limited. Early tests at that time concluded that the skeletons belonged exclusively to South Asians, all of whom died around the year 800 AD. Researchers speculated that these individuals might have accidentally fallen through thin ice, resulting in sudden tragedy. Early evidence indicated a mixed group of men and women, mostly aged between 18 and 35, along with bones from children, providing a straightforward but incomplete picture of what had happened. However, recent advances in DNA technology and radiocarbon dating have dramatically altered these early conclusions, revealing a much more complicated scenario. In 2019, a team of geneticists, archaeologists, and historians from respected institutions like Harvard University, India's Birbal Sahni Institute, and genetic researchers in Hyderabad returned to Roopkund Lake. They plan to use advanced radiocarbon dating and DNA testing to finally solve the lake's long-standing mystery, hoping the bones would clearly show who these people were and how they ended up here. But the results they uncovered were far more complicated than expected. Advanced testing revealed something very surprising. Roopkund Lake was not the site of a single tragedy, but rather the location of several separate disasters spread across nearly 1,000 years. This groundbreaking study thoroughly analyzed 38 skeletons, confirming that these remains belong to distinct groups from widely different time periods. Of these, 23 skeletons had South Asian ancestry, but even among these individuals, there were different groups separated by centuries. Some dated back to the 7th and 8th centuries, while others belonged to around the 10th century. This finding shattered the earlier assumption that the remains were from a single local tragedy. Even more unexpected was the discovery of another group of 14 skeletons from a much later period, around the 17th and 18th centuries, who had clear genetic links to distant Mediterranean regions, specifically the Greek island of Crete. Researchers were surprised because there was no known historical connection between Crete and this remote Himalayan lake. Additional genetic testing also identified skeletal remains linked to Southeast Asia, further expanding the geographical puzzle. These discoveries raised important, unanswered questions about why such diverse groups of people from distant regions, separated by continents and centuries, repeatedly ended up at this isolated and harsh mountain location, all meeting similar tragic ends. Despite intensive research, scientists still do not fully understand why these different groups of people traveled to Roopkund, or how they all encountered their mysterious fate. To better understand these surprising findings, Harvard researchers teamed up with Indian archaeologists to conduct more detailed archaeological surveys at Roopkund. Experts from the Birbal Sahni Institute examined soil samples and organic materials around the lake, hoping to find additional clues. Geneticists from Hyderabad continued their detailed DNA analyses, confirming the diverse mixture of South Asian, Mediterranean, and Southeast Asian origins. Several theories have emerged from these extensive studies. One popular explanation is that Roopkund was an important religious pilgrimage site over many centuries. The Himalayas have many shrines dedicated to various deities, and Roopkund Lake might have been one of these sacred locations, repeatedly drawing pilgrims despite the dangers involved. Another theory suggests that Roopkund lay along ancient mountain trade routes connecting India, China, Tibet, and Central Asia. Traders or nomadic groups traveling these difficult paths might have accidentally strayed from safer routes, possibly taking shortcuts or trying to escape severe weather, unknowingly wandering into dangerous conditions at the lake. Detailed studies of skeletal injuries provided evidence supporting these theories. Many bones showed signs of severe trauma consistent with deadly hailstorms, reinforcing the idea of violent weather events. But other injuries indicated different disasters such as avalanches or accidental falls, showing that Roopkund witnessed multiple fatal incidents rather than just one. Additionally, some researchers suggest disease outbreaks could have contributed, as travelers weakened by illness might easily succumb to the harsh mountain environment. Another puzzling aspect was the notable lack of personal belongings or significant cultural artifacts. Researchers found only small items like fragments of clothing, bamboo parasols, slippers, seashell earrings, and basic wooden objects. There was no clear evidence of weapons, valuable trade items, religious relics, or personal valuables. This absence of artifacts suggests that these victims were unexpectedly and tragically unprepared for whatever fate awaited them. In the end, scientific evidence from Roopkund strongly indicates multiple separate tragedies occurred at this remote Himalayan lake, involving diverse groups of travelers from very different origins and time periods. Despite these significant discoveries, the central mystery still remains unresolved. What repeatedly drew people from different continents and across centuries to this isolated Himalayan lake, where they all shared the same tragic end? For many years, the leading explanation for the deaths at Roopkund Lake was a catastrophic hailstorm. Researchers initially supported this idea due to distinctive skull injuries, which matched impacts from large hailstones, some potentially as big as cricket balls. This explanation aligned neatly with local folklore, particularly the legend of King Jazdawal and his entourage, who were said to have been struck down by hail. However, recent scientific scrutiny has raised doubts about this theory. Although severe hailstorms do occasionally occur in the Himalayas, critics argue that storms intense enough to cause such widespread fatalities across different groups and eras would be extraordinarily rare. Additionally, historical records and local traditions elsewhere in the region seldom describe hailstorms resulting in mass casualties. Given these concerns, scientists have explored alternative theories. A particularly plausible scenario involves exposure and hypothermia. Roopkund Lake's high-altitude location makes travelers extremely vulnerable to rapid temperature drops, sudden snowstorms, or freezing rain. Without proper clothing or shelter, people could quickly succumb to severe cold, confusion, and exhaustion, conditions that might explain the scattered distribution of remains around the lake. However, this theory still doesn't clearly explain why so many travelers from different backgrounds and time periods would choose to gather at such a harsh and isolated spot where survival would have always seemed unlikely. Perhaps the most surprising hypothesis arose from recent genetic findings, suggesting that some skeletons might be linked to Alexander the Great's lost scouting parties. Around 326 BCE, Alexander's armies reached northern India, sending scouts into remote Himalayan passes to find routes for expansion. Some historians speculate that isolated detachments of these scouts, disoriented and lost, might have perished near Roopkund Lake. This theory would explain the unexpected Mediterranean genetic markers found among some remains. Yet, this intriguing theory remains speculative, with no definitive archaeological or textual evidence directly connecting Alexander's troops specifically to Roopkund. A more controversial explanation is that some deaths were intentional, possibly related to religious rituals or deliberate spiritual sacrifices. Given the proximity of Roopkund to sacred pilgrimage routes, it's conceivable that certain travelers intentionally journeyed here as an ultimate act of devotion or sacrifice. Historical records confirm that some cultures practiced ritualistic deaths or self-sacrifice. While difficult to confirm conclusively, this theory could explain why there are so few personal artifacts or belongings at the site, suggesting preparation for a final, purposeful journey. For completeness, another theory occasionally considered by researchers is water poisoning caused by bacterial contamination, such as cholera or toxic algae blooms. Historically, outbreaks of waterborne diseases or exposure to toxic substances could quickly incapacitate and kill large groups, especially travelers already weakened by the arduous journey. If groups had consumed contaminated water from Roopkund Lake, it might explain their sudden and simultaneous demise without clear signs of physical violence. However, modern testing of Roopkund's waters shows no evidence of such toxins or pathogens today, making this theory difficult to verify conclusively. Additionally, some have suggested the lake might have been filled over time by avalanche deposits from even higher elevations, potentially bringing bodies from elsewhere down into the lake. Yet this scenario faces considerable skepticism. The likelihood of numerous separate groups of travelers being positioned even higher in the dangerously inhospitable mountains above Roopkund is very slim. Furthermore, the relatively intact and undisturbed condition of many skeletons is inconsistent with having been carried down by powerful avalanches. These factors make the avalanche deposit theory intriguing but improbable, further deepening the enduring mystery surrounding Roopkund Lake. Ultimately, today's researchers generally believe the truth behind Roopkund Lake's tragedy likely combines elements from several of these theories. Rather than a single explanation, the site probably witnessed multiple unrelated incidents over many centuries, including deadly weather events, hypothermia, avalanches, intentional ritual sacrifices, and perhaps even lost groups of ancient explorers. This combination of scenarios would explain both the diverse origins of the victims and the mysterious circumstances surrounding their deaths. Today, Roopkund Lake faces a new set of problems. Threats very different from the storms or disasters that once struck here. After centuries of being hidden and isolated, modern human activity has started to impact this unique site. One of the biggest threats today is tourism. As Roopkund Lake has become more widely known, the number of visitors has significantly increased. While many tourists approach the site respectfully, the rise in foot traffic has begun to damage trails and disturb the delicate environment surrounding the lake. Even worse, some visitors take bones or bone fragments home as souvenirs, causing irreversible harm and permanently destroying important archaeological evidence. Over the years, vandalism has also become an issue. Bones have been moved, damaged, or deliberately rearranged by visitors, potentially removing critical genetic data and context that could have helped scientists better understand the lake's mysteries. Another major concern is climate change. Rising temperatures in the Himalayas are causing glaciers and ice around Roopkund to melt faster than ever before. As the ice melts, it reveals more human remains each year. While this exposure might provide researchers more opportunities to study the site, it also leaves the bones vulnerable. Without protection from ice, these remains quickly deteriorate, further jeopardizing scientific efforts to properly analyze and preserve them. These challenges raise important ethical questions as well. Scientists and visitors alike must consider whether it's right to disturb or handle these human remains. After all, these bones belong to real individuals who tragically lost their lives centuries ago. Finding the right balance between scientific curiosity, historical preservation, and respect for the deceased continues to be a key ethical challenge at Roopkund. Due to these threats, scientists, conservationists, and local authorities emphasize the urgent need for better protection, stricter regulations, and careful management of the Roopkund Lake site. International cooperation and local stewardship are viewed as essential strategies to safeguard the site for future generations, without harming its historical value or disrespecting those who perished there. In the end, protecting Roopkund Lake beyond simply preserving bones or uncovering historical mysteries, it's about safeguarding a site of human significance and ensuring that those who lost their lives there are remembered and respected. Despite ongoing efforts to preserve and understand the site, many important questions about Roopkund Lake remain unanswered. One major puzzle is why people from so many different places and time periods ended up at this remote Himalayan location. Researchers are still unsure why travelers from Europe, the Mediterranean region, Southeast Asia, and various parts of India all visited this difficult-to-reach location. Some experts suggest that Roopkund might have had an important spiritual or cultural meaning that we don't fully understand yet. Others have offered more unusual ideas, such as the lake possibly being viewed as a sacred healing spot, much like other famous historical sites around the world. In this scenario, travelers might have come to Roopkund hoping for healing, explaining why there are very few belongings left behind. If these travelers were already weakened by illness, the harsh conditions could have easily led to their deaths. With climate change causing ice around Roopkund to melt, scientists expect to uncover more remains and artifacts. They hope new technologies, like advanced DNA tests, chemical analysis that reveals people's diets or hometowns, and ground scanning radar, will help provide clearer answers about who these individuals were and why they were there. Researchers want to find out if these travelers intentionally made pilgrimages to Roopkund, if they were simply lost, or if perhaps the site once had special significance that's now forgotten. Roopkund has also inspired some more imaginative theories. For instance, some people mention sightings of unusual lights or unidentified flying objects in the Himalayas, suggesting extraterrestrial or paranormal explanations, though there's currently no solid evidence supporting these ideas. Another interesting but unproven suggestion involves the existence of ancient trade routes or forgotten exploration missions that might have connected faraway civilizations. While these theories lack scientific proof, they show just how intriguing and thought-provoking Roopkund's mystery continues to be. Local researchers, historians, and international scientists are currently working together closely to carefully document and protect Roopkund Lake. They're digitally mapping every bone and artifact they find, building a detailed historical record. At the same time, researchers are paying close attention to local traditions and oral histories, knowing these could hold valuable clues. Today, the people living near Roopkund have mixed feelings about the lake. They hold a deep respect for it and remain mindful of its significance in local legends. While increased tourism brings new economic opportunities, villagers are often concerned about disrespectful visitors, disturbing the peaceful atmosphere, removing bones as souvenirs, or causing unintentional damage. Elders regularly remind younger generations of Roopkund's cultural importance, ensuring respect continues despite modern challenges and international attention. As more secrets are revealed at Roopkund each year, researchers remain hopeful that improved technology and continued collaboration will eventually solve the lake's mystery, finally explaining why people from many places, separated by vast distances and centuries, repeatedly came to this isolated Himalayan lake, only to meet the same tragic end. Imagine an endless desert landscape, stretching gently toward the horizon beneath a clear, endless sky. Southern Peru's dry plains, seemingly empty and featureless, hold a quiet but fascinating secret that has puzzled historians, archaeologists, and travelers for generations. From ground level, there's nothing particularly unusual about these desert sands, just miles of sun-baked soil and scattered stones. But from the sky above, something extraordinary appears. Huge, carefully carved geoglyphs, etched deeply into the earth. Enormous images that form striking shapes of animals, birds, spiders, monkeys, and even mysterious humanoid figures. These are the famous Nazca Lines, vast images created by ancient hands, their true shapes fully visible only from high above. Discovered by modern eyes less than a century ago, they remain among the most intriguing historical mysteries ever uncovered. Stretching across hundreds of square kilometers, the lines form precise, geometric patterns, elaborate animals, and human-like figures that silently gaze upward from the desert sands. Who created these gigantic designs? And more importantly, why would ancient people spend so much effort creating images best viewed from high above, when no one at the time could see them clearly? Was it purely ceremonial, or did they serve a more practical purpose, perhaps connected to astronomy or agriculture? And why are some figures so strange and enigmatic, appearing almost otherworldly? As we dive deeper into this fascinating mystery, we'll explore these captivating questions and uncover the intriguing theories and discoveries surrounding the Nazca Lines. Could ancient people have had motivations or methods we've yet to fully understand? Let's find out together. Around 2,000 years ago, in the dry coastal plains of southern Peru, a remarkable civilization known as the Nazca made their home. They weren't conquerors like the Persians, nor did they build grand palaces or colossal pyramids. Yet their achievements were equally fascinating and mysterious in their own right. The Nazca civilization flourished from roughly 100 BC to 800 AD, and despite their challenging desert environment, they developed innovative techniques that allowed them not just to survive, but thrive. Their secret lay in a remarkable network of underground aqueducts called puquios. These ingenious systems consisted of carefully constructed spiral wells and subterranean canals designed to channel precious groundwater to their crops, enabling agriculture in one of the driest places on Earth. It's a clear testament to the Nazca people's creativity and resilience. The Nazca people were also known for their exceptional artistry and craftsmanship, seen clearly in their detailed pottery, textiles, and jewelry. But their most famous creations were something entirely different: massive drawings etched directly into the desert surface, known today as the Nazca Lines. These geoglyphs included various animals, such as hummingbirds, monkeys, and spiders, alongside intricate geometric patterns and figures. Their creation demonstrated not only artistic talent, but remarkable precision and planning, as many of the shapes could only be appreciated fully from above. Unlike other ancient societies, the Nazca left no written records behind, making it particularly challenging for archaeologists to fully understand their culture and motivations. Most of what we know today comes from artifacts and archaeological research, piecing together a picture of a people who found innovative ways to flourish in harsh conditions. Their society remains somewhat mysterious, and there is still much that historians do not fully understand. We know they engaged in ceremonial rituals, possibly connected to fertility or rainfall, but exactly how the Nazca viewed their world and what drove them to create their monumental geoglyphs remain compelling puzzles to this day. To truly understand the Nazca, we must carefully examine their remarkable legacy, from the complex puquios that sustained life to the enigmatic lines that still draw thousands of researchers and visitors each year. It wasn't until centuries later, in the early 20th century, that modern eyes would finally grasp the full scope of the Nazca people's remarkable creations. In fact, before the 1920s, these massive geoglyphs remained largely unknown, hidden in plain sight amid the vast and desolate landscape of southern Peru. From ground level, these enigmatic patterns appeared as little more than random lines and shallow grooves etched across the desert surface. Travelers and locals passed over them countless times without ever realizing their true form. But all of that changed with the dawn of flight. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, commercial aviators began traversing the skies above southern Peru, and it was from this aerial vantage point that they noticed something astonishing. Pilots flying over the Nazca Desert began observing distinct, carefully crafted shapes emerging clearly from the sands far below, perfectly proportioned outlines of animals, insects, birds, and geometric patterns. Imagine the moment those pilots, peering down from their small aircraft, realized these weren't random marks at all. They were deliberate, intricate designs, massive in scale, and clearly visible only from high above. Intrigued by this discovery, archaeologists and researchers quickly became interested. Among the first was American historian Paul Kosok, who visited Nazca in the 1930s to study ancient irrigation systems. While examining the lines from a hillside during sunset on the winter solstice, Kosuk noticed that one of the straight lines aligned precisely with the setting sun, prompting him to declare Nazca the largest astronomy book in the world. Kosuk's discoveries attracted widespread attention, but it was his assistant, Maria Rieke, a German mathematician and archaeologist, who would devote her entire life to unlocking the Nazca Lines' secrets. Maria Rieke moved to Peru and spent decades painstakingly mapping, measuring, and documenting every line and shape she could find. Using simple tools like measuring tapes, ladders, and basic surveying equipment, she tirelessly studied the figures' precise geometry, astronomical alignments, and possible cultural significance. Rieke theorized that the Nazca Lines served as a vast astronomical calendar, carefully marking significant solar and lunar events important for agricultural and ceremonial purposes. Her meticulous work not only raised global awareness, but also helped preserve the lines from potential destruction. Thanks to Maria Rieke's lifelong advocacy, the Nazca Lines became protected, attracting archaeological interest and tourism. Yet despite her monumental efforts, many questions remained unanswered. While astronomy and calendrical functions seemed plausible, not every shape or line clearly matched celestial events. Why did the Nazca people create giant monkeys, spiders, and birds visible only from the sky? And how exactly did the Nazca people create these remarkable geoglyphs? After all, these enormous designs were made more than 1,000 years before humans had the ability to view the landscape from above. Without planes, drones, or satellites, how could the Nazca have precisely carved images that are fully appreciated only from high in the sky? The process the Nazca people used was, at least in theory, surprisingly straightforward. The Nazca Desert has a unique geological composition, a layer of dark, oxidized stones covering a much lighter, sandy soil beneath. By carefully removing this darker surface layer, the Nazca exposed the brighter, lighter-colored earth underneath, creating stark contrasts and clear lines visible from above. It was a remarkably clever use of natural materials. No paints, no pigments, just simple, yet carefully controlled excavation. Yet simple excavation doesn't fully explain the complexity and scale of these figures. The Nazca Lines are astonishingly precise, lines extending hundreds or even thousands of meters without any noticeable errors or deviations. They include intricate representations of animals like the hummingbird, spider, monkey, and condor, each carefully proportioned and symmetrical. To put this into perspective, some lines measure up to 9 kilometers long, maintaining perfect straightness, a feat incredibly challenging even with modern technology. Could the Nazca people truly have created these designs without the ability to clearly see them from above? Modern researchers have attempted to solve this puzzle through experimental archaeology, using methods and tools believed available to the ancient Nazca. One notable experiment was conducted by researcher Joe Nickel, who carefully recreated one of the Nazca images on a smaller scale. Using only basic surveying tools, sticks, ropes, and simple measurement techniques, Nickel demonstrated that precise shapes were achievable from the ground. But his experiments also highlighted the immense difficulty and time required. Even creating small replicas required meticulous planning, clear communication, and painstaking execution. Imagine scaling that process up, covering hundreds of meters of desert, coordinating teams of workers without radios, aerial perspective, or advanced surveying instruments. Simply marking the ground clearly enough to maintain perfect symmetry and alignment seems nearly impossible. Moreover, unlike modern experiments, the original Nazca artists left behind no signs of significant mistakes, corrections, or accidental deviations. Their original geoglyphs remain astonishingly accurate. This exceptional precision leads researchers to question the methods used. Did the Nazca perhaps use observational points, such as distant hills or towers, to view their work from an elevated perspective? Could they have used primitive measurement systems, complex mathematics, or astronomical observations to guide their designs with such precision? These remain intriguing questions. Ever since their discovery in the early 20th century, researchers have proposed several compelling theories to explain the purpose behind the Nazca Lines. Given the sheer scale, complexity, and precision of these geoglyphs, it seems evident that the Nazca people had a clear and deliberate reason for creating these immense figures. Over time, archaeologists and historians have carefully explored and evaluated the most prominent explanations, focusing mainly on three key theories: astronomical alignment, religious ceremonies, and symbolic communication. One of the earliest and most extensively researched theories was presented by the German archaeologist and mathematician Maria Rieke. Rieke dedicated much of her life to meticulously studying and mapping the Nazca Lines, suggesting that these giant figures served primarily as astronomical calendars. Her research showed that certain lines and shapes corresponded closely to celestial events such as solstices and equinoxes. For example, several long, straight lines clearly align with sunrise positions during significant astronomical dates, indicating they may have been used as calendars or guides for agricultural and seasonal rituals. Rieke's rigorous documentation and measurements remain valuable references for archaeologists and astronomers today. However, while the astronomical theory is persuasive, some researchers argue it does not fully explain the complex animal and plant figures prominently depicted among the lines. These intricate shapes, including the hummingbird, spider, monkey, and condor, do not clearly align with astronomical bodies or celestial events. This has led other scholars to propose that the Nazca Lines held predominantly religious or ceremonial significance. Archaeologist Johann Reinhard is among those who strongly advocate this interpretation. Reinhard suggests the geoglyphs were likely part of ceremonial processions or rituals associated with water and fertility, both critical concerns in the arid environment of southern Peru. In this view, the Nazca people may have believed that creating these large symbolic figures could help attract rainfall or communicate with their gods and spirits. Supporting this theory, many geoglyphs appear to point directly toward mountain sources of water, where archaeological evidence indicates ancient ritual activity and ceremonial offerings occurred. Reinhard's extensive fieldwork in the Nazca region, combined with studies of local indigenous traditions, has reinforced this interpretation significantly. A third popular theory suggests that the Nazca Lines served as symbolic messages or communication to deities or ancestral spirits. According to this perspective, the sheer size and scale of the geoglyphs, designed to be viewed clearly only from above, may have been intended for the eyes of gods themselves. This interpretation suggests the Nazca people created these images as large-scale spiritual offerings or messages to higher beings believed to dwell in the sky or on nearby sacred mountains. However, while intriguing, there is limited direct archaeological evidence confirming that the Nazca specifically designed their lines for supernatural beings or higher powers. Despite the compelling nature of each theory, archaeological evidence supporting any single interpretation remains inconclusive. No written records from the Nazca culture survive, and their precise motivations remain open to debate. Modern archaeological techniques, such as ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and digital analysis, have provided greater understanding of the geoglyphs' layouts and construction techniques, but have yet to yield definitive explanations regarding their purpose. Further complicating interpretation is the reality that the Nazca civilization likely existed across several centuries, suggesting the line's meanings may have shifted over time. Rather than serving a singular purpose, the Nazca Lines could have simultaneously served multiple functions: astronomical markers, ceremonial pathways, and symbolic communication. Most contemporary researchers lean toward the belief that these various theories are not mutually exclusive, and that multiple purposes could have coexisted. In conclusion, although significant research and exploration have been dedicated to understanding the Nazca Lines' purpose, a definitive explanation remains elusive. The astronomical theories presented by Maria Rieke, ceremonial interpretations championed by Johann Reinhard, and broader theories of spiritual or symbolic communication each offer valuable perspectives. Still, with current evidence, no single theory provides a complete answer. In recent decades, the mystery of the Nazca Lines has entered a remarkable new phase. driven by significant advancements in archaeological technology. Modern researchers have shifted from traditional on-the-ground methods to state-of-the-art techniques that have dramatically expanded our understanding of the Nazca Desert's secrets. One of the most notable breakthroughs occurred through the efforts of a dedicated team from Yamagata University in Japan. Led by archaeologist Masato Sakai, this team conducted extensive research using drone photography, high-resolution satellite imagery, and advanced image analysis techniques. These technologies have allowed researchers to view the desert landscape in unprecedented detail, clearly revealing subtle markings and shapes previously hidden or obscured from traditional aerial surveys. In 2019, the Yamagata University team made headlines around the world when they announced the discovery of over 140 previously unknown geoglyphs. Among these newly identified designs were detailed representations of animals, including llamas, birds, snakes, fish, and humanoid figures. One particularly striking discovery was a human-like figure that resembled an elaborate ceremonial depiction, clearly distinct in style from those previously known. These finds significantly expanded the known inventory of Nazca geoglyphs, suggesting that many more figures might still await discovery beneath the sand. The discovery process itself required meticulous and advanced analytical techniques. The team first used high-resolution satellite imagery to scan the desert floor, looking for subtle variations in terrain coloration and patterns. Once potential sites were identified, drones were deployed to capture close-up images from varying angles. These drone images were then carefully analyzed using specialized software designed to reveal faint shapes and details invisible to the naked eye. The result was the identification of numerous previously overlooked geoglyphs. However, these remarkable discoveries also brought new challenges. The newly uncovered geoglyphs, having lain undetected for centuries, were immediately at risk from environmental factors such as erosion, human activity, and changing climate conditions. As a result, researchers and international preservation bodies quickly stepped in to safeguard these invaluable cultural artifacts. Since 1994, the Nazca Lines have been protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a status that underscores their global significance and encourages international collaboration for preservation. Modern conservation strategies have become more comprehensive, involving measures such as careful visitor management, controlled archaeological excavation, and extensive documentation to ensure the geoglyphs remain intact for future generations. The Yamagata University team's findings were swiftly incorporated into existing preservation frameworks, adding urgency to these ongoing efforts. In addition to preservation, these discoveries offer new opportunities for interpretation. Archaeologists are now carefully comparing these newly found geoglyphs with known cultural symbols and regional archaeological findings, hoping to gain deeper insights into the Nazca civilization's cultural practices, beliefs, and societal structure. The precision of these figures, their stylistic elements, and their placement across the desert are all carefully studied to uncover potential meanings and purposes. With such astonishing achievements from an ancient culture, it's no surprise that numerous alternative theories and speculative interpretations about the Nazca Lines have gained popularity. While archaeologists generally agree that these remarkable geoglyphs were created by the Nazca people themselves for cultural or ceremonial purposes, others have put forward more controversial ideas. One of the most famous proponents of alternative theories was Erich von Däniken, whose best-selling book, Chariots of the Gods, popularized what's known today as the ancient astronaut theory. Von Däniken claimed that certain ancient artifacts, monuments, and structures, including the Nazca Lines, provided evidence of extraterrestrial visitors in humanity's distant past. He argued that the complex and precise designs of the Nazca Lines, visible clearly only from high above, indicated guidance or direct influence by advanced alien beings. His theory attracted significant public attention in the 1960s and 1970s, prompting widespread curiosity and speculation. Supporters of von Däniken's theory point to specific Nazca figures, such as the humanoid-shaped geoglyph, known popularly as the astronaut, as evidence that the Nazca may have encountered or depicted extraterrestrial beings. The distinctive appearance of this figure, with its large eyes and humanoid form, has become iconic within alternative historical circles. These proponents often argue that the Nazca people, lacking aerial capabilities, could not have designed figures of such precision and scale without outside assistance. However, mainstream archaeologists and researchers clearly emphasize that there is no solid evidence supporting claims of extraterrestrial contact or influence. Scholars point out that many ancient cultures created complex designs and structures without modern equipment or aerial perspectives. Experiments conducted by researchers such as Joe Nickell demonstrate clearly that creating the Nazca geoglyphs using ancient surveying techniques was challenging, yet entirely achievable by human hands alone. Further studies have shown that the Nazca possessed advanced skills in geometry, mathematics, and astronomy, allowing them to create accurate, large-scale designs through careful planning and ground-level measurements. Many geoglyphs align closely with astronomical events, such as solstices and equinoxes, reinforcing interpretations centered on ceremonial or astronomical functions rather than extraterrestrial involvement. Additionally, the astronaut figure, one frequently highlighted in alternative theories, has been studied by archaeologists, who suggest it most likely depicts a shaman or deity wearing ceremonial attire consistent with known iconography from the region. Its appearance, while intriguing, aligns clearly with symbolic representations common within Nazca culture and nearby Andean civilizations. Despite modern technology and exploration, the true meaning and method behind the Nazca Lines remain hidden beneath the sands. Perhaps their secrets are meant to remain undiscovered, quietly preserved by the desert itself. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more intriguing ancient mysteries, and be sure to check out our other videos for more ancient mysteries. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.